Greyhaven, a silent morning in early winter, 1877. The mansion at the end of Hanover Street lay veiled in morning fog, like the lingering trace of a dream not yet dispersed. On the third floor, the window of the art room was slightly ajar. The velvet curtain inside stirred gently, as if someone had just stepped out, then vanished. The body was discovered by the housemaid Elsie. She recounted that her employer, the elderly painter Edgar Rook, had locked himself in the room for 3 days. No food, no sleep, not a word. When she broke down the door, he was seated, motionless, eyes wide open, hands resting on his lap, staring at a large, empty frame. But here's the strange part. There was no painting, no glass, no canvas, only a scorched wooden frame with a singed edge, as if it had once caught fire but was hastily extinguished. The local police ruled it a stroke, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. But Elsie insisted. Every night around midnight she heard the faint sound of children's footsteps echoing in the gallery and a subtle scent of burnt wood, like the ashes of a painting that had just been destroyed. On the drawing table nearby they found a small crumpled note, barely legible, scrawled like someone writing in the midst of a seizure. It came closer tonight. Meanwhile, across London, 17 Brackley Road, a foggy morning drizzle. Lucien Crowe skimmed the brief article tucked on the last page of a local paper. He almost skipped over it until two things sent a chill through him. First, the victim was a painter. Second, the frame was scorched, yet there was no painting. He handed the paper to Dorian. Dorian read in silence, his gaze fixed, empty, yet still lethal. Something has returned. Lucien hesitated. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Dorian didn't answer immediately, but in his eyes I caught a rare glimpse. Memory. Something old, buried, and never spoken aloud. He folded the paper, slid it into his coat pocket. We need to go to Greyhaven. Greyhaven, 2 days later, the house of Mrs. Adelaide Wren, a reclusive widow on Armitage Street, became the center of an unusual second case. A neighbor claimed to hear glass clinking late each night for 3 consecutive days, like crystal tapping, lingering until dawn. This morning her door was wide open. Silence. Adelaide was found slumped in her armchair, eyes wide, frozen in terror, as though witnessing something that should not exist. The carpet before her was littered with shattered fragments, mirror shards scattered from every reflective surface in the house. Wall mirrors, vanity mirrors, compact mirrors, all destroyed as if they had exploded simultaneously. The police noted a strange detail. On the largest remaining shard, a faint imprint of a small hand, icy cold to the touch. Back at Brackley Road, Dorian received a letter from Inspector Ashford of Greyhaven. He knew of Dorian's prior involvement with cases that defied logic and hoped for assistance. No one connected this case to the previous one, but Dorian saw the link immediately. Upon viewing a photograph of the scene, he muttered only one phrase: "It has started," reflecting back. Lucien frowned. Reflecting? No one dies from seeing it directly, Dorian said. They die from seeing themselves see it. Lucien fell silent for a moment, then slowly, "You mean through a mirror?" Dorian nodded, eyes still locked on the photo. "Exactly. That night I, Lucien, was making late-night tea, intending to clean the small mirror on my dressing table. In the foggy steam, I thought I saw another pair of eyes staring back at me. Not mine. I spun around. No one. I looked back. Nothing. Only the oil lamp flickering once, like something had just passed through its light." At the end of the chapter, Dorian wrote in his journal, Case 1, scorched picture frame. Case 2, shattered mirrors, child-sized handprint. Something is being triggered, repeating a cycle once buried. Greyhaven, 3 days later. His name was Ellis Moore, age 26, a freelance painter known for his gloomy Gothic oil works. He lived alone in an attic flat behind the old market square. His neighbor, Mrs. Clive, said Ellis would often stay up late, painting by candlelight, sometimes laughing to himself or whispering things like, "Stay still, don't come any closer." This morning she brought over pastries as usual. No response. The door was unlocked. Ellis was found slumped over his easel, eyes open, head slightly tilted, as though staring over his own shoulder. No wounds, no disturbance, nothing out of place. Beside him, the torn remnants of a canvas. Only the top half remained intact, but it was enough. A child in white, standing far off within a stone-framed window. The face had been ripped away, but the hand was raised, as if waving. Dorian sat in silence for a long while, staring at a photo of the ruined canvas. "No one knows what it looks like," he murmured. "No one remembers its face. Maybe that's why it can't be identified." Lucien whispered, "So Ellis was the first to paint it?" Dorian nodded, and the first to look at it for too long. That evening, Lucien journaled by lamplight. He tried sketching the window frame from memory, but when he lifted his eyes to the mirror, the drawing on his desk was no longer empty. Something was standing in the window. He looked back at the paper, still blank, but in the mirror, it remained. Dorian entered the room. He saw Lucien pale and shaking. He didn't ask, just looked at the sketch. "You saw it, didn't you?" Lucien exhaled, voice trembling. "Not sure if I saw it or if it showed itself to me." At the chapter's end, Dorian added one line to his journal. 3 cases, 3 sightings. Each witness reflected it through canvas, mirror, or dream, and a form is beginning to take shape. Brackley Road. The 7th night since the first case, Dorian's study no longer held its usual solemn silence. The walls were now lined with sketches, maps, and photographs from the 3 incidents: the scorched frame, the shattered mirrors, and the torn painting. Lucien stood quietly, holding a cold cup of tea. "You really think they're connected?" Dorian answered without turning away from the web of clues. "It can't be coincidence. 3 deaths, 3 images, but all tied to reflection and a recurring form." He walked to the pinned board and pointed one by one. 1, the burned frame. 2, the broken mirror, child's handprint. 3, the torn painting, a child waving, all leading to the same direction. "Something is gradually forming." Lucien was silent. Then, in a low voice, "What do you think it is?" Dorian didn't answer, but he wrote a line into his journal. "A nameless spirit, a faceless shadow, 3 appearances." That night, I, Lucien, fell asleep while reading. In my dream, I stood in a long corridor lined with mirrors. No one was there, but soft footsteps echoed, walking alongside me, behind the mirrors. Then I heard it, a child's giggle, close. When I turned, every mirror cracked at once. I jolted awake, cold sweat soaking my back. The oil lamp was still burning, but the small mirror by the bed had a fine hairline crack. Fresh. The next morning, I told Dorian. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The first time might be illusion. The second is a warning. If you see it a third time, don't look at it again. Later, Dorian added a rare personal note to his private journal. I didn't tell Lucien, but I dreamt of that same mirror hallway too. I didn't walk to the end. I was afraid something was waiting for me there. Greyhaven Town History Museum. In the basement archive of the town museum, rarely visited, Lydia Trent, a part-time archivist, discovered a crate with no shipping label, no sender, no paperwork. Just one handwritten mark on the wooden tag, G. Inside was an oil painting, an old stone-framed window looking out into an empty courtyard. No people, no movement. But Lydia swore that when she turned away and looked back, something had changed. A faint silhouette had appeared in the lower left corner, small, like a child, hiding just behind the window frame. She moved it to temporary storage. 3 days later, Lydia resigned. No explanation. Dorian heard of it through a contact on the museum board. He and Lucien arrived to inspect the piece. The afternoon light streamed in from the right, casting a soft shadow over the canvas. But Dorian didn't look at it directly. Instead, he opened an old notebook, notes from a case dated 1775. A painting of a window, no figure visible, but those who stared long enough claimed to see a child inside. The painting was later burned, but the ashes were never found. Lucien stared at the painting, then stepped back. "Is this the original?" Dorian shook his head. "Not the original, the return. It doesn't need to be repainted, it exists on its own." Lucien looked at Dorian, his voice low. "You think it's trying to come back?" Dorian replied, calm and cold. "No, it never left. We simply stopped believing it was real, and now it knows. We've started to remember." That night they stored the painting in a box lined with salt and locked it. But past midnight, while they were quietly reading, the box began to make a soft tapping noise. Lucien glanced at Dorian, whispering, "Did you hear that?" Dorian nodded. "Yes, like tiny fingernails, tapping the wood." Lucien's journal that night read, "I never believed in ghosts, but something is stepping across the border between faith and fact. I don't see it clearly, but I can feel it watching me." Greyhaven, St. Alwyn's old library. Located beside the old cemetery in the southern part of town, the St. Alwyn Library hadn't seen visitors in years. The exterior was covered in moss, the brass nameplate nearly unreadable. Dorian had found the name Alwyn in a forgotten literary registry, once the depository for records deemed unsuitable for public knowledge from early Victorian times. Among them, a sealed reference to a work titled The Boy in the Window. They applied for special access. None of the clerks knew what they were asking for, but the elderly librarian, Mrs. Maud, upon hearing the name, fell silent, then quietly led them to the old basement archive. Dust blanketed the air. Their footsteps echoed as if through another century. Eventually, Dorian stopped at a locked cabinet. Mrs. Maud handed him a small brass key, her hands trembling. The last person who accessed this was a priest, Father Etienne Laurent, over 20 years ago. Lucien turned abruptly. "That name, I've heard it before." Inside was a leather-bound journal, the wax seal broken. The first page, written in an ornate old script. "Gareth, the 12th sacrificial child. The painting is the door. No one must view it a third time." The next page was an illustration, a stone-framed window, a faceless child, hand raised, surrounded by cryptic symbols etched in blood-red ink. Lucien whispered, "Father Etienne investigated the painting." Dorian nodded, and it seems he tried to seal it away. On the final page, a single frantic line, written in haste, hand trembling. "It has learned to step out of the painting, through dreams, through reflections. Next time, it won't need an invitation." Dorian closed the book and murmured, "It no longer needs belief, just memory, and we're giving it exactly what it wants." Brackley Road, a rainy night. I woke at 2:43 a.m., not from sound, not from nightmares, just an unnatural chill on my chest, like a small frozen hand had just rested on my skin, then vanished. I lit the lamp. No one was there, but on the vanity mirror, a faint, foggy mark, a small breath-shaped circle, still lingered. The next morning, Dorian showed me a new diagram, 3 interlocking circles like the map of a ritual. In the center, he'd written, "First time, reaction, second time, connection, Third time, reception. "I think," he said, "it only needs one person to witness it 3 times, and that's enough for it to step through." I gripped my cup tighter. I've seen it in the mirror, once in a painting, once in a dream, and now. Dorian looked up, eyes dark. "Lucien, next time, don't look, no matter what it says." But it wasn't so simple. 3 days later, we were called to a new case. At the home of Professor Aldous Pernah, an archaeologist. He was found dead, standing upright, facing a painting no one had ever seen before. The painting had no frame, no signature, just a stone window and the silhouette of a child, reaching beyond the edge. Lucien stepped too close. I shouted, but too late. He looked directly into the painting, and the child slowly lifted its head, not with motion, but by a subtle change in the brushstrokes. Lucien froze, his face pale. It knows me." That night, Lucien skipped dinner. He sat silently by the window, half his face in shadow. "Are you all right?" I asked. He whispered, "I think it's chosen me." End of Dorian's journal read, "Lucien has seen it twice. No way to reverse it. The third time will come, unbidden. Maybe it's always looking for someone to rewrite its story. And this time, the storyteller is him." Brackley Road, 3:11 a.m. Dorian Vale rarely suffered from insomnia, but tonight, sleep evaded him. The ticking of the clock echoed like slow knocks on a wooden table, measured, expectant. He walked into his study and poured a glass of wine, then froze in front of the wall mirror, the one Lucien had hastily covered with a cloth the night before. The cloth was still there, but the reflection was visible. It wasn't his own. It was a long hallway, dark. At the far end, a dim light, and in that glow stood the silhouette of a child, backlit, hand raised, inviting him forward. Dorian closed his eyes, took a deep breath. When he opened them again, it was still there. He turned away, but from the corner of his eye, the light remained. The next morning, he inspected every reflective surface in the house. Mirrors, windows, watch faces, polished metal. None showed anything strange. He brewed mint tea, but as steam rose from the cup, a small silhouette passed behind Lucien, reflected in the tea's surface. Lucien didn't see it. Only Dorian did. Startled, he spilled the hot water. His heart raced. For the first time in years, his logic faltered. That night, he tried writing in his journal, but the words came out jagged, unsteady. He didn't even notice he was repeating the same sentence over and over. "It's behind me. It's behind me. It's behind me." Lucien entered the room. "Dorian, what are you writing?" Dorian looked up, then slowly tore the page from his journal and threw it into the fire. "Nothing, just a dream." In his sleep that night, Dorian stood before a mirror. But his reflection wasn't himself. It was a child, wearing white, head slightly tilted, smiling, a hollow, vacant smile. End of chapter, final journal entry. "I once believed the world was divided into 2 kinds of things, those that could be explained and those that hadn't been explained yet. But this exists when no words remain, and now it is using my own image to reflect itself." Greyhaven Museum, sealed attic storage room. Harold, a museum staff member, came to Brackley Road with a peculiar tale. While taking inventory of old archives, he'd opened a door thought to have been locked for decades. Inside, nothing but a bare room, and a single painting covered in cloth, standing upright against a brick wall. He didn't touch it, but swore. When he first entered, the cloth was on the floor. When he turned around, it was back over the painting. Dorian and Lucien arrived near dusk. The attic air was unnaturally cold, as if it didn't belong to any season. They lit an oil lamp. Silence. One painting, tall, human-sized. No label, no description. Dorian reached for the cloth. Lucien grabbed his wrist. "Are you sure?" Dorian nodded. He uncovered the painting. It depicted a stone hallway. At the far end, a circular window. Standing before it, a child in a white nightgown, back turned, hair just brushing the collar. But in the mirror beside the painting, the child was facing Dorian, unmoving, its face identical to his. Lucien stepped back. "It's copying you." Dorian froze. It's telling me I'm too late." The door slammed shut. No wind. The oil lamp flickered. On the surface of the mirror, letters began appearing, written in reverse, as if by a hand from the other side. "The third time comes. No more knocking. I am already in." Dorian smashed the mirror. Lucien pulled him away. They burst through the door and fled down the stairs, neither speaking. That night, no one slept. Dorian sat at his desk. His hands trembled for the first time since I'd met him. Lucien didn't speak either. He simply wrote one line on a torn piece of paper. "If I die, don't bury me near any mirrors." In the now empty attic room, the painting tipped forward and fell face down. On the back, a faint inscription, faded like dried blood. "Gareth, 1775, First Failure, Brackley Road, a night of unnatural silence." There are nights when a city feels wrapped in cotton wool, when every sound is muffled, when the air holds its breath. Tonight was one of them. Lucien sat by his bed, the oil lamp no longer warm enough to chase away the cold creeping behind his neck. Dorian was writing in the other room. No wind, no ticking clock, only the sound, a soft knock. From the dressing mirror, 3 taps, slow, patient. Lucien stood, approached, but didn't look. He remembered Dorian's warning. "The third time will come. Don't look at it." He turned the mirror to face the wall, exhaled, and went to sleep. But in his dream, the mirror was turning back. He stood in the painting room, a canvas on the wall, blank, only a window frame. But behind that frame stood him, watching himself. Knocking wasn't from the painting, nor the mirror, but from behind his own eyes. A child's giggle echoed. Then the child stepped forward, 1 step, 2, stopped. Its eyes, this time, clearly visible. They were his. He awoke. 3 a.m. Room dark. Moonlight through the cracks. All was still, until light touched a tilted mirror on the floor. In the reflection, not Lucien sitting on the bed, but another Lucien, standing, staring back, expressionless, empty. Lucien screamed, smashed the mirror. Dorian rushed in, grabbed him. "It's here! You've seen it the third time!" Lucien sobbed. It has my face now, Dorian." Dorian's journal the next morning. "The third time isn't when you look. The third time is when it looks back. And from then on, you are no longer the only one." Etienne, Greyhaven, St. Revel Abbey, hailstorm night. Rain pounded the rooftop like 1,000 souls knocking at the door. In the Brackley Road study, Lucien lay asleep, drained, pale, his eyes distant. Dorian sat at the desk, a blank journal page before him. But no words came. None could describe the night before. Then, 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. No one was expected. No one knew this address. Dorian opened the door. A man stood there, tall, lean, cloaked in a worn indigo robe. His face gaunt, but his eyes deep, sharp, mud-stained boots. Around his neck, a silver chain. In his hands, a silver box engraved with a circle and a window symbol. "I am Etienne Laurent," he said in a faint French accent, "and I am the one who once sealed it, but I failed." In 1857, at St. Maloon Abbey, Father Etienne and 2 monks attempted to seal a painting called "The Boy in the Window." After 3 shepherd boys died mysteriously, the painting showed only a window frame. During the ritual, a boy named Gareth, son of an accused witch, was brought into the sealing chamber. No one came out. The painting changed. Now the boy stood within it, waving. Gareth was never seen again. Etienne bowed his head. I was punished. I've lived in exile for over 20 years, listening, and 3 weeks ago, I heard the knocking again, in mirrors, in water, in stone. Dorian asked, "Why seek us now?" Etienne looked at Lucien, still sleeping, sweating in his dreams. Because he is the last. If it fully takes him, the door will open, not through painting, not through mirror, but between worlds. He placed the silver box on the table. Inside, a scorched piece of canvas and an old coin etched with a sacred sealing mark. The same coin once placed over Gareth's eyes during the failed ritual. Etienne whispered, "We have one night. After that, it will no longer need a painting." Dorian writes in red ink, Etienne didn't fail from weakness. He failed because it had already learned to turn seals into symbols. This time, if we fail, there will be no painting left to burn, only ourselves. St. Ravel Abbey, midnight. In a damp little room behind the chapel of St. Ravel, the flickering light of a single oil lamp cast shifting shadows across the chipped wooden table. On that table lay a rare document, the 12th ritual record, Gareth, handwritten by Father Etienne himself. It had never been formally archived. The paper had yellowed with age, yet the ink remained sharp, as if someone wanted it to survive. Until now. Dorian and Lucien sat across from one another. Lucien had recovered from his third encounter but barely spoke. He gripped his warm teacup like it was the last breath he had. Etienne opened the file. His voice trembled. Gareth was not a random spirit. He is not a ghost, not a demon. He is a reflection. Dorian tilted his head. Explain. Etienne looked straight into his eyes. Gareth was not born to live, but to reflect mankind's sins. Each time someone gazes into a painting, a mirror, water, Gareth appears with their own face. Lucien exhaled. That's why I saw myself. Dorian tightened his grip on the journal. Etienne continued. We believed the sealing ritual would trap him inside the painting, but what was sealed wasn't Gareth's soul. It was what Gareth was carrying. The thing called the Mirror Watcher, an ancient entity. It has no true form, no voice. It only survives by borrowing the faces of others. And Gareth, the child, was only its first vessel. Each time someone sees it 3 times, it gains one more face to wear. Dorian leaned back, horrified. Then all the people who died, Etienne nodded. They didn't die from fear. They died from seeing themselves, looking back from the other side. And from that moment on, they were no longer themselves. Lucien suddenly gripped Dorian's wrist. You've seen it too. In the mirror, in the painting, in the dream. Dorian, you're next. The room fell into frozen silence. Wind howled through the cracks in the door. Then, 3 distant tolls of the chapel bell, even though no one had pulled the rope. Etienne opened the silver box again and placed Gareth's coin on the table. Tomorrow night, 3 a.m., we must use the old ritual again, but this time, the one it reflects must step into the circle. Greyhaven Museum, abandoned exhibition hall. The moon had vanished behind heavy clouds. In the center of the painting room, 4 candles burned at the compass points. Etienne knelt and drew a ritual circle with silver powder, black salt, and sacred ash, following a pattern not used in nearly a century. Lucien sat outside the circle. His palms still bore dried blood from the previous night's struggle. Dorian, dressed in his long coat, removed his glasses. He stepped into the circle. He brought nothing, except the small pocket mirror, the very one that first reflected Gareth. Etienne began chanting in ancient Latin. The syllables echoed like cold iron clashing against stone. There was no wind, but the candles flickered. The mirror in Dorian's hand cracked slightly, then stopped. A shadow appeared behind him in the mirror. not a reflection, a figure, tall, faceless, flesh-like. Don't turn around, Etienne warned. It needs you to face it, to enter you. Dorian stood still, cold sweat running down his back. It's smiling, Lucien cried, but it wasn't smiling with a mouth, it was smiling with Dorian's eyes, empty, soulless. Etienne pulled the ceiling coin from the silver box. He threw it into the circle. It hit the floor and disintegrated into dust. No, it's learned to neutralize the seal, Etienne gasped. The room shook. Paintings on the walls burst into flames, one by one, without smoke, except one. The first painting, the window, the boy, Gareth. Dorian marched toward it, eyes burning. You reflect me? Then look at me as I look back. He smashed the mirror into the painting. Glass and canvas shattered together. A scream rang out, not through the ears, but in their bones. Darkness swallowed the room. When the candlelight flickered back, Dorian lay unconscious in the circle. The painting was gone. The mirror, only scattered sand. Etienne knelt, bleeding from his fingertips. It's been driven back, but not destroyed. We've only bought one more generation. Lucien cradled Dorian. He was breathing, alive, but his eyes remained closed. One shard of broken glass stuck out from his sleeve. In that shard, a new Gareth, no longer a child, a grown man, Dorian. Etienne's final note in the ritual log: the reflection cannot be destroyed, only delayed. Next time, it won't come as a child. London, 2 weeks later, a small art gallery called The Reflection Room opened in Mayfair. Its owner, a wealthy gentleman obsessed with unsigned, originless works. On opening day, a package arrived. No sender, no note. Only one line written in faded ink on the wooden crate. From Greyhaven Archives, special restoration. The assistant unboxed the piece. Inside, a painting. Not frightening, no blood, just a stone window beneath a gray sky. In front of the window stood a man in a long black coat, back turned, hands at his sides, head tilted. Sunlight glinted off the silver strands in his hair. Visitors gathered, no one could look away. There's something familiar about it, one whispered, like I've stood there before. You can't see the man's face, but the posture, it reminds me of Dorian Vale, the famous detective. The assistant chuckled. Must be a coincidence. She straightened the painting, then turned away. Behind her, in the glass of the display cabinet, the painting reflected back, and in that reflection, the man in the painting had turned his head,